There's a pattern among people who claim that they've been abducted by extraterrestrials. Missing time, forced medical testing, and abject terror at the hands of their captors. For twin brothers in New England, their experience of abduction fits this pattern, but along with the terror, they are also manifesting strange new abilities they didn't have before.
I'm not going in there, no f***ing way. Just leave me alone. I don't believe it.
The implications, according to a report by Brookings Institute, could shatter the very foundations of not only philosophy and religion, but even science.
We were just a couple of guys camping, fishing, and we were excited about getting out of the city and being in the wilderness, going somewhere where we'd never been, getting some fishing done, paddling canoes. It was fun.
That's the way it started out for four friends on a weekend fishing trip along Maine's Allagash River. Charlie Foltz, Chuck Rack, and twin brothers Jack and Jim Weiner were all art students together in Boston.
The last thing on our minds was any UFOs or anything like that. We just wanted to go fishing. It was very, very dark. So we decided to build a fire so we could find our way back to our campsite. We built a huge fire. We built it to last several hours because we expected to be out there fishing for several hours. You know, all four of us climbed in one canoe with our fishing equipment and headed out into the lake. We were out there for approximately 15 or 20 minutes fishing with no luck. And suddenly Chuck Rack said, "Hey guys, that's a heck of a case of swamp gas." And we turned around, and probably 150, maybe 200 yards away at the most, coming out of the trees was this huge ball of glowing, pulsating light.
I remember it as being a very bright, round sphere of light that had kind of a roiling quality to it. It was yellow-white in nature. It hovered totally silently over the treetops.
Hovering there above the trees, motionless. So we thought, well, it's obviously not an airplane because airplanes don't hover. So Charlie Foltz said, well, maybe we should signal it with the flashlight that we had with us. And we thought, well, sure, go ahead, signal it. You know, what's going to happen? The minute he did that, as soon as he signaled it, it started moving towards us. The next thing I remembered was seeing the beam coming right towards the back of the canoe. And at that point, we started paddling very quickly towards the shore. As I was paddling, I was looking over my shoulder to see where this object was in relation to our canoe. And it kept just following us, coming closer and closer and closer. I was in a panic, to be honest with you. A second later, it was right on, almost on top of us, with this beam coming across the water right towards our canoe. And I remember thinking, well, we're not going to outrun this thing. There's no way we're going to outrun this thing. And then the next thing I remembered was standing on the beach.
No one remembers how they got to the beach. Strangely, their bonfire, which had been raging just a few minutes before, had completely burned out. The UFO was gone.
Elapsed time, we thought, was 15 or 20 minutes, tops. And we couldn't understand why the fire had burnt down so soon.
The four of us were just left there standing on the beach in total silence. We didn't really even talk to each other. I guess we were in shock.
The Allagash Four were baffled by the UFO and the apparent missing time. It was a mystery that would remain unsolved for more than 12 years, until the Weiner brothers began having violent nightmares.
Get away from me!
And then I would wake up, and I would be drenched in sweat, and my heart would be beating really fast, and it was like a horrible, horrible nightmare, and it kept recurring and recurring.
I started having nightmares about being in some room or some area with these strange creatures around us.
I said, I can't believe you're telling me this because I've been having the same dream.
Jim went to a psychiatrist for help with his night terrors. His doctor referred him to Ray Fowler, an alien abduction researcher.
I think that the Weiners opened Pandora's box because now they have questions about reality that they never had before. They have questions for which there are no answers.
Each of the Allagash Four underwent hypnosis. Each was regressed separately, but all told the same story about what they had experienced in 1976. Their sessions were recorded.
A beam is coming towards us. I don't know what it's going to do. It makes me feel like I'm flying apart.
I remembered a pressure, a heat of my physical body being ripped to shreds, like on a molecular level. I mean, it's the only way I can verbalize it, but it is an extremely unpleasant feeling. It feels like death.
I had no idea where I was. Then I realized that the three guys were sitting to my left on this bench, naked. All I knew is I was in a strange place, laying naked, paralyzed, with this thing coming towards me.
Creatures that I remembered, they reminded me of bugs.
No eyelids, they didn't blink.
I remember these creatures examining my brother with a type of wand, is what it appeared to me as. It was a long, thin instrument, maybe the diameter of a pencil, a little over a foot long with a bulbous end on it.
The next thing I remembered was they turned me over, and then they were doing some type of anal exam, and it terrified me.
I remember them taking a sperm sample from me. They flooded my mind with images of lovemaking and sexual visions, which aroused me. But it was totally out of my control.
The next thing I knew, we were standing on the beach.
If their stories were true, the implications were astonishing. Fowler questioned the credibility of the witnesses.
I wasn't surprised when he asked us would we be willing to take a polygraph test. I mean, I'd asked the same question.
Ernest Reed, a licensed polygraph examiner for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, conducted the tests and interpreted the results.
After administering the examinations, reviewing the charts in detail, after talking with both of the brothers, there is absolutely, positively no doubt in my mind that they are being absolutely honest with me when they tell me that they were confronted by a phenomena in the Allagash region.
One person might fool a polygraph examiner, but you have four all passing the tests, and the polygraph examiner being convinced that all four are telling the truth is very important.
After the polygraph examination, the four friends felt vindicated. The truth of their experience had been recorded. Chuck Rack and Charlie Foltz moved on. They are trying to put the experience behind them. But for Jim and Jack Weiner, their abduction experience was just beginning. The first-hand accounts and polygraph results of the Allagash 4 provide compelling evidence that these men experienced extraterrestrial abduction. But there's more. The Weiner brothers believe that strange new abilities in art and mathematics are further evidence of their abduction. Nearly 20 years ago, four friends went on a canoe trip up the Allagash River. When they returned home, they had a whopper of a fish story. But in this case, the one that got away was an extraterrestrial spacecraft. It was an unbelievable tale of fear, abduction, and missing time. But when the men voluntarily took polygraph examinations, science said they were telling the truth.
I thought I was nuts. That was my first comment, was I must be nuts. I must be going crazy. You know, there's something wrong with me. This isn't about abduction. This is about some kind of brain disorder.
Anything but that. I mean, just tell me I'm insane or tell me I'm hallucinating, but UFOs, you've got to be kidding.
It took me a while to realize that I have to deal with this. It did happen.
Researcher Ray Fowler's study of the twins' experience is chronicled in this book, The Allagash Abductions.
The Allagash abduction exhibits the typical characteristics of many, many other sightings and abductions that we've investigated. And I feel very strongly that what they described is a real experience.
The first tangible evidence that Jim and Jack were experiencing a real phenomenon was the strange and sudden change in their artwork immediately following the Allagash incident.
I started out as a very traditional painter. I was interested in landscapes, still lives. I did a lot of pretty ordinary paintings. Then, immediately after the abduction, I became interested in mathematics and science and physics and all this stuff. All of a sudden I became obsessed, and I started working it into my artwork. I had no idea why.
I used to constantly ask him what exactly was going on here, and he would always say, I have no idea. This is just what's coming out. I don't know why I'm doing this or what it means, but here it is.
It meant something, but I couldn't put my finger on it. It just seemed out of my grasp. But I felt compelled to do it.
Jim also began working in a new and spontaneous artistic direction. Neither twin understood the force that was driving him.
Immediately after the sighting incident in '76, I started seeing things differently, as if I was being programmed. My artwork changed immediately and very drastically. I was a clay worker, and I had been doing very traditional type of pottery, plates, pitchers, saucers. Looking back on it, I would say it was fairly mediocre in design. Immediately after the event on the Allagash, my artwork changed drastically. I started doing very bizarre structural pieces. I mean, you become obsessed with these things. You don't eat, you don't sleep, you just work.
After the brothers began hypnotherapy and started recalling their abductions, they used their artistic gifts to illustrate their experience.
After the hypnosis sessions were over, and I'd come home, I'd go into my studio and just draw what I remembered. It was an amazing process.
Some of the artwork that I've done since the abduction has encompassed images that, for me, try to describe what it felt like to be in this beam of light and this feeling of being disembodied or being torn apart atom by atom.
And nearly 20 years after the Allagash encounter, Jim is still struggling.
I feel like I'm doing a fairly good job on a day-to-day basis, but obviously I'm having a hard time unconsciously because I'm still having horrible nightmares where I seem not to be able to deal with these things.
Jim and Jack both believe the nightmares continue because they are still being abducted. The brothers believe that Allagash was just the beginning of an ongoing series of terrifying alien encounters.
It's not over. This is an ongoing thing. We're tagged. I mean, my impression was that they were scientists here doing a job. I feel that I'm part of an ongoing study. There's nothing I can do to change that. I have to accept it. Otherwise, what can I do? Go hide? They're going to find you.
The implications behind an experience like this means that something from somewhere else, at their own whim, at any time or any place, can take you or I, without our consent, without any protection from our government, and perform experiments on us without us having anything to say about it at all.
When Jack and Jim Weiner were children, they claimed to have had repeated contact with a strange apparition they called Harry the Ghost. But when they told their family about Harry the Ghost, he was laughed off as an imaginary playmate. The twins insist that Harry the Ghost was real and now believe that he was part of a series of early childhood abductions.